Welcome to Mind Amendment, the podcast that dares to challenge the ways that we think about mental health, physical health, addiction, and healing. You ever taken an online ADHD quiz and think, oh, that's just my personality? Well, think again. Today, Dr. Rao is walking us through how ADHD is actually present in so many adults and why so many of us are just now connecting the dots. So save this and send it to your group chat. It's time to stop calling it quirky and start understanding the wiring underneath. Welcome to part 2 of 4 with Dr. Priyanka Rao. I'm so excited to get things started today. Last episode was honestly life-changing for me, so I feel like this one's going to be just as much or potentially more so.
No pressure.
Right? Oh my gosh. So today, Dr. Rao is going to break down what's happening inside the ADHD brain during those moments of freeze and how to unstick yourself or support someone you love through it. And just like we did in part 1, we're going to start off with a little bit of fun breaking of the ice, if you will. So Pri, I want to do a mental split screen here. Can you describe what's happening inside your brain during procrastination paralysis and then compare it to what's going on during hyperfocus? You got 60 seconds to take us there. Ready, go.
Oh my gosh. Procrastination paralysis. It's usually like oh my God, where the fuck do I start? What am I going to do? Like you don't know where to start. And so then you kick into like, I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to wait for later and hope that my brain kicks on then and I can get it done. And then there's usually some shame tied up in that. And then in the hyperfocus mode, your brain's like, I am all in. This is awesome. All neurons firing. I'm in the zone, but I've now lost track of time and needing to use a restroom and needing to eat and all those things. So you're like totally absorbed in that task. The issue is when the hyperfocus goes to the sideways task that isn't actually the thing you need to work on. So like for me, like I'll spend an hour working on like the perfect logo for my website for the new sales page instead of actually putting like all the stuff on there because my hyperfocus went in the wrong spot. But I felt really productive.
Oh, the ways in which I identify so hard with that. And you know, the biggest thing for me is when I have the insight to realize that that's happened, the hyperfocus being misplaced, is when the hyperfocus is leaving me and I'm realizing that, oh no, the hyperfocus is leaving me and I'm not on the thing that really needed to get done. And I know it's not coming back. Yeah. At the time that I need it to.
Yeah, that can be really brutal. And that's a hard one to even like plan for because again, like we were saying in the other episode, like if we could channel the hyperfocus where we want it, when we want it, like that would absolutely be a superpower all the time. And sometimes it does go in the right spot, but it is hard to catch when it's in the wrong spot and you're getting really caught up on like some little thing that doesn't actually matter in the grand scheme of things. But in that moment, that's just fully got your attention.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God. If I had a quarter for every, my gosh. Okay. That was so real. Oh, if you've ever judged yourself or been judged for being too much or not enough, this next part is going to change the game for you. So, Pri, you've said it's not procrastination, it's paralysis. Can you walk us through what's really happening in that frozen state and how you coach people out of it?
Yeah, so procrastination like seems like a really simple thing, which is why we tend to say stuff to ourselves like, why can't you just start or just go do the thing already? And usually it's really tied up in a lot of big feelings. So part of working with procrastination is working with your feelings, which usually tends to piss people off because most of us just want to like power through the feelings. But you're procrastinating because it's probably a thing that matters to you, and you're either feeling like incompetent because you don't know where to start, or you're feeling anxious because you're putting all this pressure on like what it means to do the thing. And so if you delay, then you don't have to find out if you're good enough or not. It is that like brain, it's that like brain overload that we were just talking about. So your nervous system is out of whack. So the part of your brain that thinks isn't online for you, that's where the paralysis comes in. Like it's really layered. And so it's not like the whole, like, just write it in a planner and go do the thing concept that neurotypicals talk about all the time, like, just doesn't apply to us because it's way more nuanced than that.
Yeah, clearly. Well, in that case, what's the smallest first step someone can take when they're in that kind of mental gridlock?
Yeah, so step 1, nervous system regulation. Take a minute to breathe, take a minute to calm down and regulate. Step 2, often when you're procrastinating or stuck or paralyzed, it's because you don't know what your next step is. So break it down into the smallest next step. So this is like a executive function, again, that we really struggle with. It's that like planning side of organization. And so we have a really hard time breaking things down into their component parts. And this is where, like, honestly, AI is so useful for us ADHDers, because you can stick a task into something like Goblin Tools or ChatGPT and say, break it into 10 steps for me, and it will. And so if you don't know how to take the next step, it's probably because your next step is too big and you need to make it a little smaller. And then, like, to work with the emotional part, like, you want to obviously work through like the shame and the like the sense that you've got to do something perfectly to have value. So you want to be working on that side too, but from like a really like practical standpoint, instead of setting your goal of like fully completing the task, set your goal to start the task. So that's where like a 2-minute start timer can be really useful. Of like, for these next 2 minutes while I have the timer running, I just need to start. And at the end of that, I'm allowed to stop if I want to, because then I've accomplished that goal. The goal isn't to like complete the task. And that usually gets us like going enough that we can hit that momentum and keep going past the 2 minutes. I
love that. And I love bringing when somebody gives me like cause I'm already, I just love, I literally on the way here today was like, God, thank you so much for like bringing ChatGPT into the world at this part of my career, like, or in my lifetime period, just cause Anyway, so I frequently use it and I'm a huge consumer, but am always so grateful when I hear someone give a helpful tip around how to use it differently.
Yeah. AI is so helpful for those of us with executive function challenges, because it can really act as your kind of external brain for you. Like, I have literally recorded like a brain dump of all the things I'm struggling with, uploaded it to ChatGPT and said like, organize this by priority. Or like, I need to cook a meal, I'm not sure what I want to make. So, or like what to buy at the grocery store. So I'll put like 3 recipes into ChatGPT and be like, make my grocery list. Or this is what's in my fridge, what should I make for dinner? So there's so many different ways to use these tools. On the business side, oh my goodness, it's like my COO. Like, I put in like, oh, I have a launch at this date and I want to work on this 2 hours a day between now and then, like break down my task by day. So huge.
Yes, most definitely. What are some of the unseen emotional patterns like guilt, shame, or rejection, sensitivity that people with ADHD live with daily? Yes,
all of those. But the rejection sensitivity is the one that I think people don't know about. And like, I also did not know about until I was diagnosed and started reading more about it. So this is not officially diagnostic criteria, but every person I've encountered with ADHD experiences really intense rejection sensitivity. So there's a term for it, rejection sensitivity dysphoria. There's a debate about whether that's like its own diagnosis or just kind of like a description of stuff we experience. But basically what it is that ADHDers react more intensely to perceived rejection. And the word perceived is really important there, because we perceive rejection in places that it's not actually happening. And I think some of the nuance there is that as ADHDers, especially if you are late diagnosed, like diagnosed in adulthood, you probably experienced a boatload of rejection and didn't have a good explanation for it. So you're already like primed to look for rejection because you've experienced so much of it. And newer research is showing that our brains actually like light up more and react more intensely to rejection than neurotypical brains. So between the two, like when we experience perceived rejection, it is an intense experience. And a lot of people don't realize that they're not just like hypersensitive because they're weak in some emotion regulation way, but because like their brains have actually like dialed up the volume on that experience.
This is all making vivid, clear sense to me, but I'm wondering if you could give us an example. Like, I think that dumbed down, like the most ready place that we would all go when you say rejection is typically romantic, right? Like that's the, when we think about being rejected, that's the first thing that, like, when we're growing up, we hear about, or maybe a friend, somebody who doesn't want to be your friend in preschool, whatever. But yeah, when you talk about the rejection sensitivity, is there common theme among adults that you see played out that's not the romantic thing, but like one or a couple common scenarios you see how that
exists? I mean, rejection sensitivity shows up all over the place. I think the big ones would be like at work with any kind of feedback that gets read as criticism, and then feeling terrified that means you suck and that everyone hates you, and having this really big, like, full body reaction to any kind of negative-ish feedback. And then in like friendships too, whenever somebody takes too long to respond to you, whenever somebody, I don't know, gets upset with you for legitimate reasons too, like this being this like moment of panic of like, oh my goodness, this is it. They hate me. It's all done. They're going to leave me now. All those kinds of things. So it shows up in like quite a lot of settings. It's not just romantic, because like really any interaction between two humans is space in which you could experience rejection sensitivity. And we have a lot of those in our day-to-day lives. Even like the barista that like is snippy with you, and like that feeling like a rejection in that moment. Like, I mean, we're pretty attuned. Yeah.
I'll say the one that gets me most is actually, maybe there's something deeper here and why it triggered. Like, I don't love personalities that are the blank slate. People that don't give verbal verbal or like facial or just, social feedback. It makes me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so that can be through, like you said, in text, whether somebody's shorter than you think that they should be, uses a period, one word,
or okay, period.
Oh my God. But yeah, like I have, where the people pleaser comes into play with me is that the overlay there of that, the sensitivity of rejection and having that personality type that is so, what is it? Maybe flat or, blank slate. Then comes in the like, oh, well, then let me bring all of my personality times 10 because I've got to make sure that this person doesn't hate me.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, that totally makes sense though, because when somebody's not giving you that kind of feedback, you tend to, you meaning like any human, will like project what you think onto that person.
Right.
Because we need some sort of context, right? And because so many of our internal narratives are about the ways that we suck, it's really easy to assume the other person is thinking that you suck. And then that can get really tricky too when you're around a bunch of other neurodivergent people, because like, for example, a lot of autistic people in the world are less expressive. Like if they're being really expressive, there's a lot of like masking and energy usage happening there. And so like I now, especially given all the people that I work with, like have learned to either ask or pay attention to like what are the other ways that they show interest, so that I'm not relying on like the facial feedback or like using that as my only cue, because it's so easy to throw my shit in there.
I was just envisioning myself in like a professional environment and having no idea if someone struggles with that, but just being like, are there alternative ways you show interest in things other than No, I mean like in a comedic way, because you know what I'm saying? Like,
could you give me a menu of the other ways that I can know that we're good? You don't hate me?
For this conversation to continue, I'm going to need you to reassure me that, yeah.
Totally. And then like you mentioned, people pleasing. And I think earlier you mentioned like perfectionism, and those two totally play in relationship, because if you've got this internal story that there's something wrong with you or you're not good enough, you're going to always want to prove to other people that you're this like perfect version of you, because the story you're telling yourself is, if I'm this perfect person, then I will get love, I will get affection, I will get the attention I'm craving in a healthy way.
Or what I have will be lost if they find out who I really am.
They won't like the real me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. So, do you have a favorite? Reframe or script that helps break someone out of that self-blame loop?
On their like rejection sensitivity side?
Any of the, that, or any of the, those other patterns of guilt, shame. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think like asking yourself, like, what are my feelings trying to tell me? How is this thing that I'm upset about? How did it start somewhere helpful? And also like, I think the biggest work of therapy and coaching is like helping people understand the utility of their emotions. So that shame, that self-blame, it's telling you need something. Can we reframe a way to get that need that feels better to you? So all of those like emotions that we over time want to try to...
Shame exists for a purpose. It's not like a throwaway like fault that shouldn't be there. No,
it tells us that we want to do better. It tells us that like we wish we could improve in XYZ way, or it tells us like we screwed up. And so like it can be useful. We just tend to misapply.
Yeah.
And so if you can understand that like, okay, I'm trying to push myself to do better. This feeling isn't getting, or like this line of thinking isn't getting me there. What would be a different way that would get me there? That helps you kind of get unstuck from that like shame, self-blame kind of place. Or yes, I deserve some like reflective thinking here around what I could have done better. And I did the best I could with this context. Here's how I'll deal with it next time. So like kind of working with like, what's the point of the feeling? What is it telling me I need?
Yeah.
Versus I need to make this stop.
That's extremely helpful to me. And I think that, I love how you started by, I would start with going back to where it started, tracing back your steps to where it started with good intention.
Yes.
Or is that what you say? Good intention?
Yeah. Or like, an intention to be helpful.
Intention to be helpful. Right. It definitely alleviates a lot of that narrative of.
Yeah. A question I get a lot is like, how do I avoid the bad emotions, or how do I make the bad emotions stop? And my usual, and I'm sure eye roll inducing first response is like, there's no such thing as a bad emotion. Yeah. There's some that are like way more uncomfortable than others. And there's some that like help move us forward and some that keep us stuck, but they all give you information. And so if you can learn to listen to your feelings for the information, you're going to get what you need to kind of get unstuck from that.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely.
This podcast is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health. If you or a loved one are struggling with trauma, addiction, or mental health, we are ready to answer your questions and help you take that next step. Call our admission center at 888-648-4098 or visit us online at www.promises.com. Our team is ready and waiting to answer the call for help.
What tends to get misinterpreted most by people who don't have ADHD, especially in relationships or work environments?
Ooh, I do think a lot of the misinterpretation is around like intention and care. So I think a lot of people think that you just are lazy or you don't want to do the thing and that you're not trying hard enough. And I think that's why that becomes the narrative we absorb.
Yeah, I was going to say that because yeah.
That's the story we absorb because probably somebody said it to us, and probably that's like the general consensus of the people around you that don't understand what's going on for you. And so where I see it the most, like relationally, and this shows up at work too, is around like, if you cared, you would do it. And so there becomes this like conflating of getting something done with caring about it or thinking it's important. And when you take into account that like we have a lot of executive functions that make it hard for us to make movement, to actually do the thing, even when it matters to us. And then you throw in the idea of an interest-based motivation system, which I'll tell you about in a second.
Yes.
Those two together mean that like whether something is done or not and whether it's important to us are like actually completely different constructs. And so I think a lot of people misjudge that intention and that care.
What would you say to the person listening right now that even though they heard you just say that, they're like, I don't believe that? Because there are so many that
I know.
don't get, like, I'm like, they need a second paragraph from a doctor, from Dr. Rao explaining just a little deeper as to how this is really true. They're not directly correlated.
Yeah, I mean, our brains like don't light up and fire in the same way as a neurotypical brain. And so the skills around task initiation, actually literally getting started, the skills around like breaking something down into its component parts, the skills around the emotion regulation, and the skills around holding things in your brain are all underactivated in our brains relative to neurotypical folks. So like quite literally those things just don't happen the same way for us. And we have no control over that. And if you talk to any ADHDer, they're going to tell you, I really want to do this thing. I just can't fucking do it. And it's so frustrating for us because we know what we need to do. We know how to do it. And we just like cannot activate our bodies to do it and our brains to do it. And so it really is like it's a neurological thing that makes it hard for us to activate in the same way that neurotypical folks do. Now, that does not mean that we can't like get things done. It just means we need to approach it from a different angle. And that's where I think a lot of people miss because they don't then try the different angle or they don't understand what that different angle is. But for the neurotypical folks, like it really, it's so frustrating for us to want to do something and not be able to go do it. Even something as simple as like at the end of the night, I will sit on my couch and I want to go to bed and I cannot get my ass off the couch to go up the stairs to go to bed. And like every part of me wants to go to sleep and it's just like, I'm paralyzed. And it's really hard to understand that if that's not what's happening in your brain, but that applies to like work tasks and relationship tasks and like holding things in your memory and all of those things. Like it shows up everywhere.
Now, Pri, what you're describing right now is a vastly different explanation and description of ADD, ADHD than you and I were raised with hearing about.
Yes. Why is that?
Yeah.
Well, we have researched more and we've understood better what it actually is. I mean, in the 90s, everyone thought it was like a boy thing versus a girl thing. Up until the 2000s, everyone thought you grew out of it in adulthood, so adults didn't have it. And so part of the beauty of scientific medical research is that we get to understand more as time goes on. And so I think we're having better nuanced understandings of like executive function, what it really is, and how much of your life it impacts. Like I was saying before, like a lot of people don't realize emotion regulation falls under that umbrella. And so a lot of functionality is housed in that like part of your brain that just has a really hard time getting going. And then can I tie us back to that like interest-based nervous system? Because I think that's a really important...
Can I insert something here really quick? Because as you just mentioned and brought us back to the using emotional regulation, and I referenced, I have so much of it in my toolbox and I talk about it all the time, and I do lectures on it. There's a metaphor that I love from a clinician that was actually, she was our first guest on this show that I interviewed. And she says, you go to a hardware store and you get 1,000 hammers and to build a house, and you get to the house and you can get a little way there, but you're not like, you can't build a whole house with 1,000 hammers. And while this may be a poor analogy because I feel like, my toolbox is diverse. Yes. So it's not like I have a whole toolbox of hammers, but if you have this toolbox and you're trying to apply it in areas where are great, but there's all these other areas where it's needed and you have absolutely no idea that that's when it's supposed to be used. Again, the house isn't getting built.
Totally. Well, it's like you show up with your toolbox to build the house, but then you forget you can use your toolbox to put the IKEA furniture together.
Ooh,
So,
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many places to use those tools. And I think we don't realize how much they like translate across different relationships, different tasks, different places. And in like reverse, like how many of those different contexts need the tools. So that's where like the folks that get frustrated with us don't realize that like the same tool that helps me remember a phone number when you tell me, or your name when I meet you, is the same thing that like helps me remember that like we have to finish this important paperwork for our mortgage by this date.
What's the one that helps you remember names?
That's all working memory, and I don't have a solution for that.
Oh, okay.
I have a list in my phone. I know, I'm sorry. That is like, I have so many people asking me like, how do I remember names? And I'm like, fuck if I know. Yeah, I have gotten more comfortable with asking people to repeat them.
Same.
And just owning that like, I'm so sorry. I know you told me. And it just flew out of my head. And then I also literally have a note in my phone where I will put the person's name and how I know them, so that like the next time I need to go there, I can Google the place, like, or like search for the place in my notes, and it'll pop up their name.
Ooh, that's good. How you first met them? Mm-hmm. I love that idea.
So I had like...
That's not helpful though if you're like me in a situation where I've already forgotten it before we finish.
Oh, before we finish talking. Yeah. Then I either pretend I know it, or I will circle back at the end and then put it in my phone.
Okay.
And sometimes the act of like writing it.
Like, listen.
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
There was recently a parent who, so my hack for learning all the parent names in my kids' class is that when I invite them for my kid's birthday and I get the RSVPs back, then I save them in my phone as like the parent's name and the kid's name. But there was a parent who replied back just saying that he was Violet's dad. And I didn't get his name in the text message. And so then when he introduced me, got nothing. Like he told me, got nothing. And so I saw him again recently and I was like, okay, I have to own, I know I've seen you like 4 times now. I know that we've had conversations. I know you told me your name, and I'm too fucking ADHD to have remembered it. Like, would you mind telling me again? And he was so cool about it because he's like, oh yeah, I do the same thing. And he told me again, and it worked out just fine. But
so what you're telling me is it's an opportunity to just connect more with people and be more human. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, most people, if you can acknowledge that you know you should know it, but you've forgotten, they get less mad than if you just like pretend you never asked. Or yeah, I think people appreciate that like the intention is there. And every now and then somebody will get pissed at me, and it is what it is. That's why I kind of love Zoom meetings now, because everyone's name is at the bottom. It's been very useful.
That must be nice. I hate Zoom meetings. I was just being honest.
So back to the interest-based nervous system. So this was another one of those things that I don't think a lot of people know about ADHD. So neurotypical people have an importance-based nervous system, which means their like body and brain orients around like what's important. So things that matter to them, things that are urgent, things that have deadlines, etc. ADHDers, we have an interest-based nervous system, which means our brain orients around what's interesting and exciting to us, not what's important. So things that have like cooperation, competition, high interest, urgency can kind of kick us off sometimes, but like those are the things that motivate our nervous system, not importance. So that's why it's very easy to have something that's like objectively important and that matters to us that just falls out of our brain because it's not interesting enough to activate our motivation system. And that's why like we can see that a task is really important or it can be something that we want to do, but it doesn't like light up our brain enough to start working on it. And so that shows up in relationships a lot because partners think, oh, you forgot this thing or you didn't do this thing because it doesn't matter to you, without realizing that like it falling out of my brain has nothing to do with whether it matters to me or not.
Well, making all the sense in the world to me, what you just said, playing devil's advocate.
Yeah.
But is it not just a lack of willpower and being assertive enough and, you know, exerting, you know, your self-control, and working harder, and if I can do it, you should be able to do it.
No.
Type of thing.
Hard no on all of it, because nothing about ADHD is around like willpower, control, whatever. It's like what our brain's doing on its own. So like most of us will tell you we don't want to drop those things. We don't want to forget that our friend exists until they text us, or like we don't want to not work on the thing that matters to our partner. It's not at all about willpower. If it was, that'd be a way easier problem to solve. Instead, it's just like how our brain actually fires. So again, like you can hack it in the sense of you can then come up with external reminders for the things that are important. And then you can like use the parts that do light up your motivation system to get you to do the thing that matters to you. But without those extra motivators, it's really hard for us to get moving. It's like, that's a big part of that task paralysis that we're talking about, where we just can't start. So if you can add in the passion or interest, the urgency, the cooperation or competition with another person.
Okay, so I hear you saying that, but can you give me an example of what you mean by adding that in? Like, how would you couple that? Give me an example of one of the things that needs to happen and then coupling it with the interest-based whatever.
You need to work on your taxes because
Okay.
that's important, but you really don't want to and you can't get started. So then you have somebody body double with you. So they sit in the room and they work on something too. And just having another human there helps our nervous system get motivated. Or you need to clean the house. You fucking hate cleaning the house. You don't want to do it. It's not exciting. So you set a timer and have a competition with yourself around how much you can get done in 20 minutes. Or you are cooking dinner and you don't really feel like cooking, so you throw a podcast or an audiobook in that you enjoy, so you get to do something that's interesting to you while you're doing the task that's not interesting.
Those are all really very much food for thought for me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm saying thank you a lot through this because I've decided that this entire series is going to be about me. Sorry, everyone. But hopefully you're going to get something out of it too. Okay. Getting back to our outline. Okay. So my last question here. Well, no, I've got a follow up after it, but we're nearing the end of our part 2. What's one daily habit you recommend for couples or coworkers to foster understanding?
Ooh. Foster understanding between them. I mean, talk. Communicate. Say like, hey, here's what I remember I'm supposed to be doing. Is this aligned with what you remember I'm supposed to be doing? Like on the work front, for example. Like at work, in terms of like externalizing your brain, that's all like write down what happened at the end of a meeting and send it off and be like, did I miss anything? Or use an AI tool to take meeting notes and make sure that everybody's aligned. Relationally, that is like a check-in around like, hey, are we on the same page for what happens in the morning? Or like, this was how today went. How did it go for you? Like just the general like connections. And then on the like conflict side of things, my little tool that I've developed with my husband because of my rejection sensitivity is like, if there's ever not even real conflict, just like anything that I perceive as tension or anything where I think like he might be upset. One, I just ask and then he'll crack a joke about it. If it's totally wrong, I'll be like, are you mad? And he'll be like, yes, I'm absolutely furious. Can you tell me why? And then, he has a great sense of humor.
That's amazing.
Or after we actually have had some like a tense conversation or a conflict conversation at the end of it, like we've gotten in the habit of saying we're okay. Because at the beginning I used to like freak out being like, oh my God, is he going to dump me? Like, is this the end? Are we breaking up? And he realized that like all I needed was that like one, we're okay at the end to like re-regulate. And so now before we go to bed or whenever we wrap up the conversation, it can be like, I'm still mad, but we're okay. Or just a simple, we're okay. And that is so helpful for regulating on the rejection sensitivity side.
Okay, that was going to be my last question, but now I have to play devil's advocate to the. What would you say to the person or maybe professional who in your field that might say that that's enabling to people who that are leaning into the unhealthy side of a attachment style? What is it? What is the attachment style that's
It's like the insecure.
Insecure, yes.
Anxious.
God, I just flew out of my head.
Attachment, yeah.
Anxious attachment, insecure. So is it like, because I also feel like there's a crossover there of that probably there's some rejection sensitivity. Also, they may not have ADD, ADHD, but they experience that same rejection sensitivity. So is it enabling to do the
We're
okay even if we're not okay, like to need that and to say that? What do you say to that?
So don't lie. Don't say we're okay if we're not okay. And by we're okay, I mean like our relationship is okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm pissed, but our relationship's okay. And my like pushback on that is, well, one, I think a lot of ADHDers probably do have attachment styles
Yes.
because of like all the rejection we've had and so on and so forth. But also I think it's all about like scale, right? So if you have to spend an hour reassuring me at the end of the conversation, yeah, that's enabling. That's not actually helpful. But if there's a small thing you as a partner could do to help me feel better at the end of it, to meet a need of mine, and it's not that big of an ask, like why wouldn't you do that as a partner when you care about your partner? And so I hear that a lot. And like, I'm also a couples therapist, and I hear that a lot of like, well, I shouldn't need to do that. And I'm like, well, maybe, but also like you care about this person and they're giving you an easy thing that helps them feel better. Wouldn't you want to help them feel better? So I think it's, again, like that scale. If he needed to tell me an hour's worth of reassurance for me to regulate, that's not so helpful. But if he can just say like, we're okay, meaning our relationship's okay, I don't see a harm in that.
What a great answer. I just have to say, a huge part of my job in this, the way we've set up this show is to intentionally dissent, or for you to talk about how you're dissenting from, common theory around what it is. And so, that was like very, like, I love how insightful that was. Thank you so much. This has been a wonderful part 2. Y'all come back next week. Today, our practical audience takeaways are recap for those of you who, like me, need it. Use the phrase, it's not that I won't, it's that I can't yet, to interrupt shame-based narratives. Try the 30-second action trick. Pick the smallest possible motion. Open the email, write one sentence, move your body. And if you're close to someone with ADHD, switch "why didn't you" to "what made that hard today."
Yes. Love that.
Yes. We'll see you next week. If this episode made you pause, laugh, or think differently, drop us a comment and tag someone who needs it. Then follow for more. This is your mind. This is your moment. What are you going to do with it?
This podcast is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health. If you or a loved one are struggling with trauma, addiction, or mental health, we are ready to answer your questions and help you take that next step. Call our admission center at 888-648-4098 or visit us online at www.promises.com. Our team is ready and waiting to answer the call for help.